What are the things that get you the most freaked out? Is it what people think of you? Is that so important to you that it gets you freaked out? Or is it not being able to control the future? Is that the thing that freaks you out the most? Or is it a bad grade in school? Or is it that when you get on a scale and you look and it looks like you have gained weight? So your emotional part, your emotional human part drives you to try to be focused so much in your problem and so much on what is going on down here. You are so fixated to fixing your problem and figuring out a solution that you are forgetting about what's happening up there. Prayer changes you. It does. So you become a different person after you pray. It's not just changing you as a person, but it also changes your brain. It changes your way. Prayer is like a physical workout for the brain, and it changes its chemistry. When you pray, when you spend 12 minutes of prayer every day for about 8 weeks, what's going to happen to your brain is that your brain going to change. And that change can be remarked, can be seen in a brain scan. That's one thing. The other thing that's get affected in this case is the social part of your brain. Your social interaction get improved, your compassion get improved, and this can be seen visually in your brain. Hello and welcome back to Unbounded Growth, a podcast that challenges you to grow a better version of yourself. My name is Shebindu, and I will be hosting you solo today. I'm usually here with my friend Mark, but he couldn't be with me today. So we decided that I should record this by myself, and it should be a solo. So these episodes and this podcast is one way of us sharing a part of our lives with you. We have had, my friend Mark and I, we've had different area in which we have grown, in different area in which we've succeeded. And we felt led to be hosting this podcast and to be able to share and to have these conversations about how we do things and about what are the books that we read and that's influence our lives and help us live on a day-to-day basis. As of this episode, or the last few episodes that we have recorded, either when we're together or when it was just Mark by himself or when I was by myself, we have been talking about a book by Craig Groeschel, and the book is Winning the War in Your Mind. This book directly influenced my life. It has played such a considerable part in my life, and it has had so much effect in my life, to say the least. Because since I started reading this book and started applying some of these principles, I started discovering some part of me that I used to ignore, or I used to just think that they're not there, but they're there. I'm human. And one thing that we all share as human, we share the human experience. And this book has just brought me to that place of realizing that I'm a human. And there's a lot of common things that we share as humans. And there are a few things that to me I used to ignore, and I'll be able to share them with you here because, as I say, that there's this part of my life or part of our life that we decide to share with you and to be able to have some of these conversations together. This book, the part that I'm going to be covering here is talking about some of the challenges that our mind face. And now using those challenges now, or building from those challenges to how do we overcome, how do we go and come out on the other side of this while facing these challenges and these problems that we end up facing. And the common concept that we're going to be diving into here is the idea of panic. Panic, basically, where you get freaked out. Like, what are the things that get you the most freaked out? Is it what people think of you? Is that so important to you that it gets you freaked out? Or is it the fact that you cannot control the future? Not being able to control the future. Is that the thing that freaks you out the most? Or is it a bad grade in school? I'm a professor at a college here in Dallas, and one of the things that, and I've been a student, so one of the things that could freak out students, or I would receive so many emails from students that, hey, I'm worried about my grade. I don't know if I did well, and what can I do to get better grades? Is that what freaks you out? Is that what gets you to panic? Or is it that when you get on a scale and you look and looks like you have gained weight? Is that your biggest thing that scares you? I have quite a few things that I'm going to be sharing with you that have really just freaked me out, that have been that have challenged me in life, and they have left me with something within. So, some of those things I've just recently discovered them, and I'm going to be sharing them with you. But some are things that they have happened for a long time, and they are just things that bring me to panic. And to bring it up, there's a couple of years ago, back in, it was 2016, it was early summer, I believe. Yes, early summer 2016. My friend and I, one of my great friends, we went on a road trip. We were going to a youth camp in Jasper, Texas, at a city in East Texas. And as we drove there, I used to drive this car. My very first car, it was a Chevy HHR. My friends used to make fun of it. They used to call it a Toro, but it was my car. It's my car. I was happy with it. It has its challenges and its problems, but it was my car. It was my first car, and I was happy having that car. But the car had a few problems, and they started growing a lot more. We had a transmission problem. So I got the transmission rebuilt. And after getting the transmission rebuilt, my friends and I were going on this trip. And we got to drive about 150 miles east of Fort Worth, heading toward, trying to get to Jasper. And we got in the middle of the roads, and we were just seeing smoke in the back of the car. And as we drove, we could just see smoke, and we just thought it's probably coming out of another car, or something's happening, something is burning. It's summer in Texas anyway. So we were not really paying attention to it. But the more we drove, the smoke got higher and higher. And there's a lady who was driving by who passed us and signaled us like, hey, check the back. There's a lot of smoke coming out. So we pulled over. And when we pulled over, we pulled over in a very small city. They don't have any transmission specialist over there. So we got some help from a few people. We got to push the car to the only mechanic shop they had in the city. And from that mechanic shop, the guy looks at it, he was like, yeah, this is definitely a transmission problem. We can't fix that here. The best we can do is offer you a transmission fluids. So we're just going to put transmission fluids inside and just pay us some money for it. And good luck. When they put the transmission fluid back in and I tried to drive, the car could not reverse. The car could only go forward. So we asked again for help so we can push the car and get it to a position where we can drive forward. And my friends and I, we just put our hands on the car. We started praying for the car. We tell God that, hey, we made this trip here to fellowship, to be with our brothers and sisters, to be with the body. And if God can only help us at this point, because we don't know how we're going to get home, we don't know how we're going to get where we're going, and where we're going, it's even a smaller town. So we decided to start driving back, praying that the car can make it back. As we drove back, I kept on looking behind the car. And I could see the smoke, a little bit of smoke. So I would basically just move my foot off the gas a little bit, and then try to engage again, just back and forth, doing like that. I would try to not try to drive too fast. I think we tried to make it back to Dallas or to Fort Worth at driving about 55 miles an hour, just try and give and take, driving on the right lane, and try to get there. And every time I look at the back, especially when we get to a place where there's such a little elevation, like a little hill, I would freak out. I wouldn't know really what to do. And as we drove, we got back to Fort Worth. We were about a half a mile from home. There was this one gas station there. And we pulled over at the gas station because when we're pressing the gas smoke started coming out a lot, and we're half a mile away from home. So we said, okay, let's just pull over here. So we pull over at the gas station. And as we pulled over, My friend, we tried to pop the front trunk, and when we did that, pop the hood. I think that's for that car it was a hood. So pop the hood, and then we could see what's going on, and just a big flame came out. We had to run to the gas station, try to get a fire extinguisher. We don't even know how to use a fire extinguisher, so we are all panicked and freaked out. And we just take it, and we did it as best as we could. The emergency people came over, and it was such a mess. Following that, the car got towed, got put back in the mechanic shop. But following that, each time I was driving that car, I used to check the back to just see that, hey, is there any smoke? If I drive too fast, I became like a slow driver. I was driving, the highest was 80 miles an hour. Actually, until now, I still don't drive as fast as I used to drive when I just started driving. I used to drive super fast. But now I'm a very, very moderate driver, because every time I used to look at the back, and I could just feel like there is something coming at me, like the car might stop, or there's smoke that might be coming out. That was just something that always freaked me out every time I drive, to a point where even when I bought a new car, I bought a brand new car with no problem. Every time I accelerate and I hear the noise, because it was a sport car that I bought, I hear the noise, I could still look back and see if there is smoke that is coming out. That will still get me to panic. And so since I lived through that a lot, and it just became really heavy on me, at a certain point, I decided to completely just not use a gas car anymore. Not that there's something wrong with gas cars. It's just that I decided to go electric just because of this fear and this panic. And my thought was directed towards that aspect. And it always say that your life move in the direction of the 5 of the strongest thoughts that you have. Like your strongest thought, that direction is where your life goes. So basically, my entire driving experience, my entire driving life moved towards those side. And here, there's a lot of advice here in the Holy Bible that's come and merged to this. Considering that all my thoughts was, every time I get in the car, every time I drive, it was just so negative. And that affected how I drove. It really affected my life and how comfortable I was driving for such a long time. Now, here's the good news. If something like that can affect you, it means the opposite as well can affect you, right? So here, the good news is, like, if you are thinking on things that are noble, that are right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, those things, your mind and your thoughts are going to move to that direction. Your entire life is going to be directed to the things that are good and noble. But if you think of things that are bad, your entire life is going to be just formed and built on things that are completely wrong and that are not helping you move forward. So one thing that you should ask yourself now is, like, why do we panic? Why do we freak out? It's not just the only thing that freaked me out. There's also a fact that growing up, we used to watch a lot of some of these old Nigerian movies, where we watch movies, something like called Karashika, where there's this lady who was such an evil lady, and she had these really, really long nails, like super, super long nails. And she would take that and she would split somebody in half and would do all these things to the person. And as a kid, those freak me out. Until now, every time I see long nails, not that just anything wrong with long nails, but every time I see that, I just get panicked. I get in this situation, but what's really happening in my brain? That's one thing I want to be able to dive into. In our brains have different parts, and the way God designed the brain is the most fascinating organs. Being a brain scientist is one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I get to be at the forefront of some of these very, very fascinating things that are happening within us and within our brains. And one of the things that came up, or one of the things that's the brain does is the fact that there's a part of the brain that is called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that is responsible for emotion and survival instinct. Think about the fight or flight response. Something like, hey, do I stay or do I run? Like, what do we do? Like, that's the part of the brain that's get into, and it's the quickest to get into action. So quick. It's just, whenever anything scary happen, whenever anything that can freak you out happen, directly, without even you trying, your brain shift in this specific mode. So it's that part of the brain that's really just plays with your emotion and things like that. And the way that works is it's so automatic, it's so direct that whenever something happens, it just switch into action. Right. Now, there is also another part of the brain, apart from the amygdala. There's the prefrontal cortex. Right. The amygdala is this part of the brain that gets you freak out. Like, basically, anything, wherever happen, however happen, the amygdala will freak out. And it will get you to run, or it will get you to survive. That's where it is. Apart from that, there's now another part of your brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the logical part of the brain. Is the part that, if you want to say, like, the part that thinks. Right? Now think about it this way. Think about the amygdala as being your hippie cousin. You're always freaked out, always irritated, overstimulated, always on fire, always want to burn something, always something should happen. That's how the amygdala works. And the prefrontal cortex will be more of like your uncle, like this wise uncle who has a law degree and who always speaks logic and so on. And God gave us the logical part of our brain so it can help us to control the emotional part of the brain. So God gave us the prefrontal cortex in such a way that it could keep the amygdala in check and ensure that nothing crazy can happen. And we have to be able to train these different parts of our brains in such a way that our logical parts can kick in quickly, or as quickly as our amygdala can kick in into our brain. And the way it plays now in terms of decision making, it's actually even more interesting, because the amygdala pushes us to tend to focus on our problems. So your emotional part, your emotional human part, drives you to try to be focused so much in your problem and so much on what is going on down here. You are so fixated to fixing your problem and figuring out a solution that you are forgetting about what's happening up there. You are not looking at the bigger picture at all. Your prefrontal cortex help you do that. And God put it that way. God designed it that way, in such a way that we cannot get so fixated in our problem and lose focus on the presence of God. Because it happens a lot. We get so fixated into what we are going through. We get to try to figure out a solution. We get to try to blame somebody. We try to get so fixated. We try to react so emotionally to our problems, and we lose sight of the presence of God, who is there and who is helping us. And to that, there is a response that is so good in the Bible, that the Apostle Paul, and a little bit of the background about Paul, for the people who don't know Paul. Paul did not hang out with Jesus, so Paul was some of the second generation, if I can say, of apostles, because he was not directly near Jesus when Jesus was alive. He met to Jesus through a supernatural experience. But this Paul guy, he was in prison. He was in prison and in Rome, and he He was in prison, punished for the sake of Christ. And for that, when he was in prison, he was writing letters. Now, there's one letter that is such a beautiful letter that he wrote. He wrote it to the church of Philippi. And in this book, in this letter, he's talking about, he's basically sharing an experience, but being in jail, going through some of the heaviest things that you can ever think of. He believed so much that the Lord was near that he wrote in his letter to the church of Philippi, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcend all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. Now, this guy is going through some of the things that could get you as freaked out as possible. Some of the things that in other experiences, in other people, even in the Bible, actually, like Elijah, not to throw shades on Elijah, but Elijah was in a similar situation where he was going through a very challenging time. He had a lot of highs, and he was going through a low. He got into a depression, and he started telling God to take his life, and so on, and all of that. But Paul, here, he's in prison. He's challenged as hard as possible. But he said, and he's telling everybody else and all of us, because we are still benefiting from that, to not be anxious. To not be anxious. To show us that when we think we've had enough, God is enough. That when we think we have had enough, God is enough. That is one thing that Paul shows us in this book, that regardless of the things that I'm panicking for, the financial situation that is just so hard, anything that I might be going through, I have to know that God is enough. When I've had enough, there's this one day I just came home, I've had completely enough. I have been challenged in the craziest way, and I'll be sharing about that more as we go through this. I just had enough. But something came to me and told me that God is enough, and that's brought me so much peace. My definition of God is peace. My definition of God is a peaceful state. It's not a place where everything is just fine. No, it's just being in a place of peace. That's how I experience God. That's my definition of God. You see, so one thing I want to add here is like, even if, and I'm going to quote Craig Groeschel, he say, even if everything is entirely wrong, I still have a God who is entirely righteous. Even if I were left with nothing, I still have God, and He is everything. That is the attitude that if you keep on training your brain to move towards that way, to do things in that perspective, the peace of God that passes everything that you understand will come in you and will put you in a place where you will be comfortable. He will carry you because He has done it, and He's the God who does it. That is one thing, or one situation, or one place that this concept can directly be applied. When we are panicking, when we are freaked out, when we have not paid our bills, when we are going through a challenging situation, we have to know not to be anxious, but to pray and to bring our request to God. And apart from that, on the top of it, we have to be thankful with thanksgiving. We have to let God know. And when we do, the peace of God that transcends everything that we understand will come in us. And I'm going to add to that here another point here that Craig Groeschel makes that to me is crucial. He says it needs to live inside us so it becomes an automatic response. How do you replace an old rut with a new trench? Repetition. When I found myself driving back my car and a lot of smoke is coming from the back and I'm panicking and I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do each time, I keep on repeating to myself that God is enough. That my experience plus God's presence is everything I need. I have experienced it before. I've been through this and I have overcome. Now the question you might ask me is, how do we overcome? The way we overcome is by changing our perspective. First, changing the way we look at it. Instead of having the perspective of panic, where our amygdala is in constant push and our amygdala is freaking out each time, we should have a perspective of praise, a perspective of thanksgiving, bringing things to God. A mindset that you could try to create as a believer or as a listener that's listening to me right now is that if it's big enough to worry about, then it's big enough to pray about. So the perspective of praise that I'm about to bring up at this time is the idea that wherever we panic, whenever things are getting challenging and hard and complicated and we can't take it anymore, we should bring it to God. We should pray about it. So if it's on your mind, then it's on God's heart. If you're constantly thinking about it and you brought it to God, it's in God's heart. And you can place it there. You can put it there so that God could take care of it and could bring the peace that passes everything that we understand. So as I said, when you've had enough and your problems are tempting you to panic, you should pray. Now, you should let God know your need. You should show God. The next question somebody might ask me is, how should I pray? Jesus taught us how to pray. That's one way. The other way, prayer has, I don't think prayer really has a direct formula. Prayer is a conversation between a man and his creator, between a man and God. And in a conversation, is the more you do it, the more you are building a relationship. The more you know how God acts, the more God knows how you act, but he's God, so he knows directly how you act. But the more you know how God acts. And there are different ways since this year started, this 2024, I've been journal praying. And that has been some of the best experiences I ever had actually in my life. My journal right now has over 100 prayers from January until now. I've been just consistently letting my needs known to God, not just my needs, my friends' needs. I've been doing that. So that's one way of praying. So you can journal pray. You can talk your prayers, just conversation. You can yell your prayers. You can scream really hard, really high and yell your prayer. So you might pray long or you might pray short. Just make sure you pray. Regardless of the length, there is no perfect way to pray. Just pray. Just have a conversation with the divine. Have a conversation with God. And you will find that the peace of God that passes everything that you could ever understand will come in you. And there's a lot of more advantage to prayer than just what I just mentioned here. That as I live out, and this is Craig Groeschel that's speaking, as I live out this strategy, he says, I'm finding I am less anxious and have more assurance. So the more he prays, he's finding in himself that he is less and less anxious and he has more assurance. Prayer has removed a lot of panic and replaced it with peace. Prayer works. That's what he says. And I believe it. I believe it. And prayer works. Prayer changes things. Perhaps more important, prayer changes you. Your brain changes. A few things I'm going to bring up. Another part of my life. I spent about 8 months in my research without getting any result. This is 8 months. I work 12 hours a day. I show up to the lab in the morning. I'm in the lab half of the night. Every single day for 8 months. I am not getting things to work. Everything is just challenging and things are hard. And I couldn't take it anymore. It became hard. And if you know anything about research, is that there are expectations. There are people who are expecting you to produce, right? And it's important to produce because that's the only way your career goes forward. So if you're not getting any result, that's a big deal. That's a problem. And of course, I'm freaked out. For 8 months, I'm not getting anything to work. And I'm just basically repeating the same thing over and over. And it's just not going right. And this one day, usually I show up to the lab on Saturdays. When I'm alone in the lab on Saturdays, especially during those times, I will bring a speaker. Or if I don't have a speaker, I'll have headphones on. Or lately, if I don't have headphones, I'll use my glasses that I have these glasses that have an AI inside. And I could use those to play music and stuff. But this one day I show up to the lab and I had been 8 months without nothing working. And as I got into the lab, I did not, and I'm going to talk about it a little later here. I did not praise God or worship God after the fact. No, I just found myself in the lab. I'm alone. I have either my speaker or have my headphones. That day I had my headphones on and I'm playing my playlist and I'm just trying to work. I'm trying to figure things out and I'm praying. So I'm praying and really just talking to God and also worshiping God at the same time and having this moment of intimacy with God. And as I was working that day, my playlist defaulted to this one song. It's called Do It Again. The song say, I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. And as I got to that, I just felt this anointing on me. I felt like God was moving. I really never felt that like a connection like that in research before. And as I was repeating that song, I've seen you move the mountain, and I believe I'll see you do it again. Things were not working. It hadn't worked for 8 months. I was repeating the same thing again. And of course it didn't work. But something just hit me. Something happened that day. It was on a Saturday. I left, something told me, leave your stuff, leave your research right here and walk at your office. And I was feeling like God was speaking oracles to me. Change this, fix that, change this. I've been looking at this for 8 months. And mind you, I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering. I have several years of experience. I am getting an MBA. So I have done all of this stuff in my life. So I've learned and relearned. I've taken tests. I've done all this stuff. But I couldn't crack that one part there. And it was a genius part. Like it was that part where, as I always tell my friends, that a lot of my work involved me coming from 0 to 1. So that was coming from 0 to 1. After you are at 1, you can multiply 1 by n. You can multiply a lot of time and people can use it and enjoy it. But the genius part is to coming from 0 to 1. And at this point, I was trying to come from 0 to 1 and I had no idea for 8 months. But guess what? That day, God spoke to me after I had prayed, after I praised God. God spoke to me. And when he did, I had a solution right on the moment. I had a solution. And the next week it was working. And I told my boss, it worked. And we were all overjoyed. And we praised God for that because it worked. And now the work has been accepted in Nature. Nature is the top journal in my field. So you can imagine how overjoyed. God gave that to me. God get the glory of giving me such an amazing inspiration about my research and showing me exactly what to do and when to do it. So one thing I will tell you for sure is prayer works. The other part is the fact that prayer changes you. It does. So you become a different person after you pray. It's not just changing you as a person, but it also changes your brain. It changes your way you think. So there is a report. There's a report by Dr. Andrew Newberg. Dr. Andrew Newberg is the director of research at Thomas Jefferson Hospital and Medical College in Pennsylvania. He studied the brain by using neuroimaging techniques, including functional magnetic resonance imaging, so people call it MRI, single photon emission computed tomography. And he, just to say the least, is a brain scientist. So he has a lot of brain stuff that he does. But he wrote a book. He wrote an article, actually, in the books. The book, the title was How God Changes Your Brain. And he said in that book that prayer is like a physical workout for the brain, and it changes its chemistry. That's Dr. Newberg, who said that prayer changes the chemistry of your brain. And a lot more neuroscience here for the brain. Another neurotheologist. This one is Dr. Caroline Leaf. Dr. Leaf writes, he says, it has been found that 12 minutes of daily focused prayer for an 8-week period can change the brain to such an extent that it can be measured on a brain scan. If you pray for 12 minutes every single day for 8 weeks, it changes your brain, and that impact can be seen actually on a brain scan. He said that this type of prayer increases activity in brain areas associated with social interaction, compassion, and sensitivity to others. It also increases frontal lobe activity as focus and intentionality increase. So think about it. When you pray, when you spend 12 minutes of prayer every day for about 8 weeks, what's going to happen to your brain is that your brain going to change. And that change can be remarked, can be seen in a brain scan. That's one thing. The other thing that's get affected in this case is the social part of your brain. Your social interaction get improved. Your compassion get improved. And this can be seen visually in your brain. Your sensitivity to others, your compassion, your empathy get improved by kneeling and praying. And quoting again here Paul in the book of Philippians, he said, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. So from conforming to being transformed and renewed, prayer literally renews your mind, leading us to God, peace and understanding. So prayer can really have that impact in you. And I can go on and on about this, we can become a hostage to our amygdala, and we can try to stay and train. And that's why we see in today's world, there's like so many people just keep on training their amygdala. They keep on feeding it all this fight or flight. I don't trust people. I don't do this. And you keep on limiting yourself to the emotional part of your life instead of enjoying also the logical part of your brain. And it's the logical part of your brain that also sends you to pray, that tells you, go and pray. So another quote by Dr. Andrew Newberg's finding, he found that the scientist community, some of the stuff that he found also were very astonishing to the scientist community. He discovered that prayer can regulate and decrease the amygdala's fight or flight response. That is a key point. That's a very important point, because when you pray, even the fight or flight response of your amygdala get improved and get decreased and regulated. That is a key for your success, because even in leadership, if you're a leader and you are always panicking, you're always freaking out, then your entire troop gonna fall. Nobody gonna have enough confidence to actually push anything forward. So prayer is choosing to trust the promises and power of God. Prayer is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. That's one of the best way that you can overcome your panic. And one of the best way, actually, that you can also feel the presence of God. Prayer is deciding to turn and surrender our feelings and control of our lives to God, trusting His promises and power. That's what we are going to do. We are going to pray, and to pray in faith. Prayer really has an impact on our life, and we have to be able to use that as a tool to defeat or to overcome in any situation that we have. And in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16, the Bible says, "Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." So when we show up to God with confidence, we get that peace. And it's a peace in the time of need that is very, very important thing that we can use it, a tool that we can use to overcome. The other thing that's another tool to coming against panic or to overcome panic, as Craig Groeschel puts it, is that whenever we look at, still in terms of perspective, let's try to look through and not at. Let's try to look through our situation and not try to look at our situation. That is one other thing that we can do. Because he say here, and I'm going to quote him, he say, "There are so many things that are right. The reason you are panicking is because you are just looking at what's wrong. Don't forget to also look at what's right." Let's look through our situation. So, apart from prayer on one hand, the other hand, changing our perspective, looking through our situation. Once we change of perspective, lead us to praise God. And praising God changes our perspective. Growing up, I was taught one thing, and I think that's one thing that has always worked. It said, when you have bad thoughts, start singing. When you want to do something that you don't want to do, start praising God. Start singing. And back then, we were taught to sing hymns. Start singing hymns. Rock of Ages, clap for me, let me hide myself in thee. Songs like that. Songs that lead us to start praising God. And when you start getting into the moment of praise, and I shared that when I shared my testimony about my research, when I get in a moment of praise, and one thing that we have to do, and that is very crucial that we need to think about here, that when we are praising, we don't praise just after the fact. We can thank God after the fact, but we need to worship God and we need to praise God before anything happens. Think about the children of Israel when they were going around Jericho. They went 7 times. They were praising God 7 days. They went all around the wall of Jericho. And after that, after singing, after going around it 7 times, the walls collapsed. Think about it that way. That is what praise brings. And it's not just at that level. Praise also has an effect on your brain. It plays such an important role. in your brain. And the same, remember, the neuroscientist, the brain scientist, Dr. Newberg. Dr. Newberg has also proven that praising and worshiping God leads to quantifiable changes in brain volume and metabolism, especially in a part of the brain called the cingulate cortex. The cingulate cortex. Now, turns out that an increase in the volume of the cingulate cortex result in increased capacity for compassion, thinking, and feeling. So basically, the more the cingulate grows, the more empathetic you become. So praise puts you in a situation of empathy. You start feeling towards other people, toward your environment, towards God. You start creating this bridge and this connection with yourself and with your community. Praise lifts you up and brings you in the presence of God. Praise can also take God where he is to join you where you are. And if you remember the three children of Israel, that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, when they were there, they were thanking God as they put them in there. And guess what happened? A fourth person was seen there. An angel joined them. So your life always moves, as we said, in the direction of your strongest thought. What consumes your mind controls your life. So basically, what is in there, what is in your mind, is what controls your life. One thing that I've realized with my life lately, that I wanted to share as well in this platform, is the fact that I didn't know I had this, but I realized that I have a fear. My biggest fear is the fear of being alone. And I am not saying that my problem is bigger than anyone else or my problem is smaller than anyone else, but it's just different. It's my problem. It's a problem it's the thing that gave me to panic the most. And it's so subtle because when you look at me, you see clearly that I am a very confident person. I am a person who believes in themselves, a person who believes in what they have achieved and what they will achieve, and a person who trusts God in every part of their life. That's how I describe myself, and that's who I am. But at the subtle level, there is this fear that I realize that grows in me, and it's the fear of being alone. And not just to put that in a romantic sense, but it's also in a social sense. Whether I've realized that my entire life has been built or has been influenced with the fear of being alone. I could think about it as far back as when I was in college. I had an urge and a sense of community that even sometimes would affect my work or my performance, but I really just wanted to be with somebody. I wanted to be around people. I wanted to just be around people. There's nothing wrong with being around people, but I was just afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being bored. And I still am. It's something that I'm still working through, and it's something that I've realized that. So I believe that one of the hardest things to do for yourself is to diagnose what gets you to panic and what freaks you out, what puts you in an instant where your amygdala is the first thing to respond over your logical part. And one thing that, as I was going through this Craig Groeschel's book, is that my amygdala was mostly responding or was taking in each time when I find myself when I'm alone. And that could also influence my life, because that will become, oh no, I'm alone. I have to pick up my phone and I have to text people. Who is that person that is online right now? Who is that person that I should have a conversation with? Who is that person that I should go to coffee with? Who is that person who I should take to dinner today? Who is that person that I should be around? And it's influenced my life. And it's really just something that's influenced or even pushed away the glory of God that I'm supposed to experience. And it leads me to not trust God as much as I should trust God. And it's something that I just realized recently in my life, is that I have this part in me that consistently wants to be surrounded by people or by someone, at least one person. And I should have, and this needs in me, a fear of me of not creating a strong enough connection. That's to a point where sometimes I overdo it. Sometimes I would just start pushing so hard. I'll start having so much expectation toward somebody, and that expectation is completely uncalled for. And it would create this eagerness that I would think that is good, but that eagerness would somehow and somewhere push me to start even putting pressure on the other person. Hey, I met the person like yesterday, and today I want to hang out. And also at the end of this week, I want to hang out. And sometimes I'm even forgetting that I have work because I'm just afraid that I'll be alone. Of course, I've given that some justification to that because my brain has to be trained itself on making a logical and so on. But I realized that it was my amygdala that pushes me that controls that aspect of me. Everything else in my life tends to be very, very logical. The way I give opinions, the way I judge, the way I do things, they tend to be very logical. But this one aspect of my life is pushed by my fight or flight and by survival instinct. I feel like if I'm alone, I won't survive. And at a certain point, I was even feeling like I'm drowning just because of the fact that I'm alone and it's just me. And I'm sharing this with you because somebody else might also be going through this same thing. It's something that I personally am going through, where I am now battling with this. I'm now going into prayer. As I mentioned earlier, that I've been journaling prayer. I will come home and I will just feel so alone. And when I do feel so alone, I would take my phone, and I have a journal app in my phone, and I would just start writing things to God. Sometimes I'm writing in such a strong feeling like God, I'm just so scared of being alone. I want to feel your presence. And at that time I will get some level of peace. And I've been going over and over this, and it's just been such a thing that had been really playing such a huge role in my life. And with that, I have been practicing a lot of the concepts that Craig Groeschel put in this book. This book we have been through for the last several months with Unbounded Growth, and it's really been a pleasure that I'm able to share some of these things that are in my life that I have yet to share with anybody. And whoever person who is listening to this or is watching this has gotten this part of my life, that's, hey, I also struggle with this, and I am praying through it. And I've been seeing really, really good progress because I would tell myself that, hey, today I won't be texting anybody. I really did that. I spent a couple of days where I'm just telling myself, no, I'm only going to be responding to people who reach out. But as far as me writing a text today, I'm not writing a text to anybody. I'm just going to try my best to enjoy the presence of God and to enjoy my own presence, just to have fun myself and to do stuff that I could enjoy. So it gave me a space to read. It gave me a space to study my Bible. And I'm going through it as I go day to day. And this book has placed such a tremendous influence on my life for me to do that. And one of the things the other thing is that the other approach that I've seen that has really also helped me in life is also, as I said earlier, that I developed this level of confidence where I'm just very confident about things in my life. And when I face time when I do not have that confidence, when I'm having a confidence issue, one thing I tell myself is that I develop leaders, and it's not something I do, it's who I am. So when I feel like I'm not succeeding in things, when I feel like my research is not going well, I tell myself that I build technology. That's who I am. It's a part of my life. I create those. and I create leaders. I really help develop leaders. And it's also a huge part of my life. I mentor, I tutor, I help, I train. That's a huge part of my life. And that brings me so much confidence. So when I'm failing in one aspect of my life and I'm seeing God helping me win on the other aspect of my life, that brings me to start worshiping God. And really, if you know me, you know that I worship God, and I really go deep into my worship because I've seen the influence of that in my brain. And with that, this is the end of this book, and we look forward to starting. I look forward to recording again with Marc-Alain as soon as we meet sometime in the next couple of weeks. And until then, may God bless you, and I will see you in the next episode. I'm really excited for the next book, and just get ready as we keep on diving into this. Thank you.